Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In the Grand Inquisitor chapter of Book 5 of the Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov, in his poem, The Grand Inquisitor, has the character of that name talking to Christ and explaining how they are improving upon the divine plan and, in some respect, Christ's poor performance in making humankind happy. And part of what he's narrating here, it bears upon tendencies within human nature that would have to be dealt with if happiness is going to be attained. And it turns out that happiness and freedom are in many respects, at least according to the Grand Inquisitor, incompatible. And he does so through the lens of the three temptations discussed in the gospel narrative when Christ is out in the desert fasting for 40 days and nights, and the devil comes to him and tempts him in three ways. The first way had to do with bread. Christ would be very hungry after 40 days fasting. The second has to do with something different. And here we move from, you might say, the purely earthly realm of human basic needs for things that satisfy our hunger, our thirst, our need for shelter, all of those sorts of things, to more properly spiritual matters. And in the miracle, I'll just read you the passage that he has here. He says that when the dread and wise spirit, that is the devil, set you on a pinnacle of the temple, it takes Christ all the way up to the temple in Jerusalem and says, if you would know whether or not you are the Son of God, cast yourself down, for it's written of him that the angels will bear him up and he will not fall or be hurt, and then you'll know whether you're the Son of God and will prove what faith you have in the Father. So the devil is telling Christ, jump, and the angels will catch you. It'll be a miracle. It will be a sign that you are indeed the Son of God, because, it's even in Scripture right here. And Christ says, no, I'm not going to do that. And what's going on there? This is being interpreted by the Grand Inquisitor as not just something that has to do with Christ and the devil, but something that has to do with what Christ will do in relation to humankind. And so the Grand Inquisitor says that you heard and rejected the offer, you did not yield and did not throw yourself down. In this, you acted proudly and magnificently like God. So you're setting an example. And he says, but mankind, that weak, rebellious tribe, are they gods? You knew that if you made just one step, one movement towards throwing yourself down, you would immediately have tempted the Lord and would have lost all faith in him. But you didn't do that. Are there many like you? Is this something that human beings are actually capable of? And the Grand Inquisitor is saying, yes, in fact, some human beings are capable of that, but the majority of them are not. The majority of human beings need something different. And here he tells us, this is the transition from the first temptation to the second temptation. He says that the question that humankind asks, before whom shall I bow down? There is no more ceaseless or tormenting care for human beings so long as they remain free than to find someone to bow down to. And it goes beyond that, though. He says, the human being seeks to bow down before that which is indisputable. So we don't just want to bow down before anything whatsoever. Maybe in terms of getting bread, we'll bow down before somebody. We're like, that person's a real idiot, a scumbag, but he feeds me. So, just like you go into your work and you're like, my bosses are morons, but I get a paycheck, right? But when it comes to things that matter more to the human being than just being fed, we want there to be something like proof. We want to know that we're bowing down to the right thing, and we want to bow down together. We don't just want to bow down by ourselves. We want other people to join in that bowing down. He says that, here we go, the care of these pitiful creatures is not just to find something before which I or some other person can bow down, but to find something that everyone else will also believe in and bow down to, for it must needs be all together. So long as you have your set of beliefs and other people are doing something different and believing differently and maybe not even believing in anything, there's always a little bit of doubt in your mind. You're like, I don't know if I'm on the right track. I'd really like if they would get on the same page with me. And so what is a natural human tendency? What do we often do with our freedom? We fight. We fight, on Twitter with words. We fight with sticks. We fight by engaging in almost genocidal actions, actually sometimes quite genocidal actions, where belief is somehow tied to an ethnicity, right? And he says that this need for communality of worship is the chief torment of each human individually and of mankind as a whole from the beginning of the ages. In the cause of universal worship, they've destroyed each other with the sword. And here he's got a really interesting passage. He says, they have made gods and called upon each other, abandon your gods, come and worship ours, otherwise death to you and your gods. So you can say, yeah, those religious people, man, they really need to impose their views on everybody else. And this is where Dostoevsky shows that he's very attuned to his own century and the century coming afterwards, because he says, it's not really about religion as such. People can abandon gods. They're still going to make other idols. So it's not just gods as such. He says, even when all gods have disappeared from the earth, they will still fall down before idols. So they're still going to demand absolute satisfaction of each other. It could be the marketplace as idol. It's really sad that these people should die so that we can open the economy. But, they've got to worship that idol. It could be some other thing about universal harmony of human beings and the wonderful utopian society we're going to produce. It could be the race. It could be the class. It could be whatever it is that you want. It could be some other made-up nonsense. It could be worshiping science, like the I effing love science people that were putting out memes all the time before, and essentially treating science as an idol. We call that scientism, right? People are willing to fight and kill each other to impose these things upon each other. He's not saying everybody is. Some human beings won't. Some human beings may not necessarily be, following Christ, but they're at least saying, I'm not going to participate in this bloodletting, this killing, this destroying of other human beings, this suppression. But most human beings are cool with that, according to the Grand Inquisitor. And, when you look at situations when everything starts to fall apart, it turns out that may in fact be the case. So there's fighting over gods and idols. He also talks about another part, which is handing over their conscience. Right? He says that the human being has no more tormenting care than to find someone who they can hand over as quickly as possible that gift of freedom with which the miserable creature is born. He alone can take over the freedom of people who appeases their conscience. He says, with bread you were given an indisputable banner. Give people bread, they'll bow down to you. There's nothing more indisputable than bread. You can look at it, you can bite into it, right? He says, but at the same time, someone else takes over his conscience. Well, then he'll throw away the bread and pursue that. Right? Follow him who has seduced his conscience. And so, he's saying, Christ, what you really ought to have done is provided people with something incontrovertible to believe in. He says human beings need a firm idea of what they live for. They do not live on bread alone. They need something else. And you failed to provide that to all but to a few. You stressed freedom and love and, sort of willingly giving your faith. You refused to perform miracles at certain points when you could have done so, and thereby, put everybody under one banner and appeased everybody's consciences and made everybody happy. What you refused are miracle, mystery, and authority. And you could say, well, wait a second, I've read the Bible. He turned, loaves into fishes and water into wine and had a blind person see and healed lepers and also, resurrected the dead. I mean, we've got an account of that here. Christ doing the same thing in the Grand Inquisitor passage. What are you talking about? The difference is that Christ did miracles or signs, as they're called in the Gospel of John, when he chose to. He didn't just do it all the time. He wasn't like a miracle dispensing, robot or something like that, which is what the Grand Inquisitor is really talking about. So miracle, mystery, and authority, Christ didn't actually make use of these. When he could have said, listen, I'm God incarnate. Everybody bow down, worship, and you Pharisees and Sadducees, you're both wrong, so shut the hell up and get over here. He didn't do that. He could have, but he didn't. He did use mystery, but the mystery that he used is different than the mystery of the Grand Inquisitor. And these, as the Grand Inquisitor says, these can be used to hold firm the conscience of human beings for their happiness. He says there's only 3 powers on earth capable of conquering and holding captive forever the conscience of these feeble rebels: miracle, mystery, and authority. You, Christ, rejected the first, the second, and the third, and gave yourself as an example of that. And that's an example that's extraordinarily difficult to follow. Only a few can do it. We're not here just for the few. We're here for the many. We got to take care of the flock, like you said. We're shepherds. So we're doing a better job than you did, Jesus. So, he tells us that, humans want miracles. And they want miracles in some respect more than they want God. He says that you knew that your deed would be preserved in books. You hoped that following you, human beings would remain with God, having no need of miracles. It's better to believe without miracles and to follow. And he says, you did not know that as soon as the human being rejects miracles, they will reject God as well. Because the human being seeks not so much God as miracles. And since human beings cannot bear to be left without miracles, they will go and create miracles for themselves, their own miracles this time, and bow down to the miracles of quacks, though he be rebellious, heretical, and godless 100 times over. You didn't come down from the cross when they shouted to you and said, come down from the cross and we'll believe that it's you. Why not? Because Jesus, in what he's presenting to human beings, again, not something that everybody is necessarily capable of. He wanted to provide an example. He wanted to provide a path that only a few would be strong enough to follow, unfortunately, according to the Grand Inquisitor. So human beings will make their own miracles. They will make their own things that they believe in, their own things that captivate their conscience. Again, we can leave behind religion and find many people who have their own secular versions of these, their own worldly versions, right? Which often have just as much faith and dogma as any religious position. What about mystery? He rejects the mystery that Christ brings. He says, if there were so many as that are supposed to be at the resurrection, they were not like human beings, but like gods. They endured your cross. They endured scores of years of hungry and naked wilderness, eating locusts and roots. And you can point with pride to these children of freedom, of free love, of free and magnificent sacrifice in your name. But remember, there were only several thousand of them. What about the rest? Is it the fault of feeble mankind they could not endure what the mighty endured? Is it the fault of the weak soul that it's unable to contain such terrible gifts? Could it really be that you came only to the chosen ones and for the chosen ones? If so, there's a mystery here, and we can't understand it. And he says, if it is a mystery, we have the right to preach mystery and to teach them it's not the free choice of the heart that matters, not love, but the mystery itself. We get to give them mysteries. We'll come up with our own. We'll substitute our mysteries for your mystery, which is incomprehensible. Or if it is comprehensible, only a few people are getting it, not the masses. Finally, there is the issue of authority, right? Authority can also captivate conscience. And he says that, we're not with you, we're with him. That is the devil, the spirit that is, tempting Christ. That is our secret. We've been with him 8 centuries ago. We took from him what you indignantly rejected, the last gift he offered. And so we're going to talk about that in a separate thing. But authority, here's the segue into it. Authority is another thing that can hold people's conscience captive. The Grand Inquisitor and his colleagues and their church, but it really could be any other institution that's going to do the same sort of thing. Take away human freedom, get humans to give up their human freedom because they're weak and confused and quite frankly, degenerate, so that they can all be made happy. That is going to be done with miracle, mystery, and authority. So this is the second great temptation that Christ didn't take, but the Grand Inquisitor and his organization did follow out and think through.